am jazzed about this conversation, quite honestly, because it's a little bit out of my normal box of conversation. That's, a lot of healthcare. But not only is this important to me and things that I've dealt with in my life, I think it's just such a tangible conversation for everybody. Everybody say hello to our guest, Mr. John Troutman. John, for the crowd, tell us who you are, your great company. And as we get ready to talk about this, what do you think you want people to end the rainbow getting ready to take away from this?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lester. It's great to be with you and with this audience. My name is John Troutman. I am the National Director of Marketing for M&S EAP Services. We are a continent-wide provider of robust EAP programs and services, and got a lot of success and a lot of great success stories, and hopefully we can share some of those today.
So EAP. So, I've been in this business 21 years. I'm going to tell on myself. I got to think that until I met you, this conversation was somewhat of an afterthought. The life and disability vendor includes 3 EAP visits. It's one of those, that's the 7th bullet point down on the bottom. It's kind of a check the box. And until last couple of years, definitely post-pandemic, the conversation around mental health wasn't talked about. There's benefits in the plan, but I don't know that it is in the top 25 questions historically that we had. And now it's everywhere. There's all of these new vendors. There's thousands and thousands of millions and millions of dollars being thrown at this. And you can't open a magazine, a newspaper, watch the news without seeing the realities of what our nation's facing. So, John, first of all, EAP, define it, and let's go 101 so that we can make sure that the entire audience has kind of a basis line of where we're going to start from.
No, that's great, Lester, and you brought up a great point. So EAP stands for Employee Assistance Programs. And to be very clear for those employers out there, and even for those advisors, for that matter of fact, it's so important you understand the terms that get used in EAP, because we all, as providers of EAP services, we use the same words that they mean different things. When you hear about that clinician network, who are these individuals? Are they master degree clinicians? Or are they a person who had got a rubber stamped on the internet? And yes, those things do happen, where you can go and for an hour or 2-hour training, you get technically certified. But those are things you need to be aware of. What does that mean? What does a clinician mean? What does a session mean? Is that an hour long? Is that 40 minutes long? Is that less than 40 minutes long? So those are some very important things to understand and to read the information. You brought up a good point, Lester, about just checking the box. I don't know about you, but when it comes to any part of my health, I would not use a service that has a warning at the very bottom. So there are some applications out there, and I am not saying this to mudsling. I'm saying this because I genuinely want to make a positive impact in people's lives when it comes to their mental health. So read the bottom line, scroll down those apps you see that are out there that may have a warning that you would want to know about before you started using them for your employees.
So I mean, curiosity killed the cat. What is this warning? Like, I actually don't even know. It's like, what does this warning say?
Yeah, some of them are out there, and I don't have that whole text in front of me, and I don't read a teleprompter, right? You and I are very relational individuals. We get passionate about it, and we have enough data stockpiled in our brain to just roll with things. But there are warnings out there that say this is not a final plan or a solution, and please contact your primary care physician or your care provider for your best care. So I am very grateful that I work for an organization at M&S EAP where we don't have to give those kinds of warnings. We're dealing with master degree clinicians who've been vetted for 5 years in their area of expertise, and that's continent wide.
So John, let's address kind of the big picture, right? Mm-hmm. So I look at claims data every day, so I could see you can't look at the top 5 medications and not see an ADD, an antidepressant, all of those things. So I think the majority of ways people do this, especially as Americans, is we need a pill for it. Right? It's got a stigma around it. Mental health is a word. Depression is a word that, even when you say it, you kind of crawl, back a little bit, and you're like, that's not a cool word. We've had conversations that, especially as, macho men, right? That's definitely not something we're able to talk about. Let's address the big picture issue. If an employer's out there, an advisor's out there, like, how big is this issue? Give me some stats with, number of people, dollars spent. What is this impacting with productivity and presenteeism and all those words that, if I'm an employer or an advisor, I really want to understand and know how this is impacting my employee population, because this isn't something that comes up and smacks you in the face. This is something that's, eating away at the foundation that is a human or an organization.
You're exactly right, Lester. And that's a great point. Also a great question. I mean, you don't have to dig far into the newspaper or a magazine to look at all the statistics that are out there. So, and if you're an employer, I don't have to tell you that you've got mental health challenges going on in your workforce. They're there, whether it's absenteeism. Again, as an EAP provider, we've seen anomalies rise to the surface of people starting very different behaviors that they never did prior to COVID. And one of the things that we do is we get into job performance referrals. So again, having an EAP, what's the benefit of doing that? Well, you don't want to get rid of an excellent employee. You want to keep your excellent employees. It just so happens they're going through a very challenging season of their life, whether or not you know what's going on or not. So when you see those anomalies, if you have that type of robust partner, and I use that word because we are not a checkbox vendor. We're not. We're going to be very purposeful to make sure that utilization happens, and that not just the employee, but their entire household knows it's there. So that job performance referral, you can actually walk that employee through the process after there's been a contract agreement made with the employer, so that employee understands what outcomes they're going to be working on. So we have seen great results, which have been literally every single week across the country. We've been helping employers. I want to use the terminology of hand-holding that employee, walking them through counseling, life coaching, to address those challenges that they've gone through, they've added in their world, to get better outcomes, to get back to where they were before this challenge even started. And these employees are now staying on the job.
So John, again, first I'm hearing about this. So this is really interesting. So this is a situation. I'm an employer. I have an employee. Something's going wrong. Like, John was a rock star before. Something happened. He took a left turn somewhere. I can go to my employee and say, did you understand that we've got this benefit? Or is this something that they come to you and say, I've got this employee, they took a left turn somewhere, I'm not necessarily sure. Is it in or is it out? And then talk to me about that conversation of like, they're probably trying to dig up what's going on, but like, talk to me about how that session or sessions go.
Again, that's a great point, Lester. So again, that's the benefit of working with, and we're not the only provider that's built to be a strategic partner. I'm not here to self-promote. I'm here to explain the value of being and working with a robust EAP partner. So if you have that type of EAP program, that manager, that person in HR can reach out directly to that EAP program and say, you know what? Here's the situation. There's an anomalous behavior taking place. What can we do to help this employee? That HR team, if they're doing what we do, will work directly, understand those outcomes from that HR team, and create that agreement. And then they'll also go to that employee and they'll willingly sign off, understanding, okay, this is what they need to work on to keep their position. They're willingly signing off to get that counseling. At no time are we sharing confidential information, but we can go back to that employer and say whether or not they're making progress or if they're going backwards, whatever. Now, we've seen great results, and sometimes, Lester, this is 2 months, sometimes it's over a year. But in the end result is they're helping this employee out. And you know what? They're seeing great results in their employee workforce. And the other thing is this, that employee starts talking about that program because they were saved. right? They could have been let go. They were saved. So now they've got a success story in motion. They're talking to their coworkers about this EAP program that helps utilization, and the end result, everybody wins.
Yeah, that everybody wins is such an interesting thing, right? I mean, you look at that and say, somebody didn't lose their job. They're going through something that happens, especially COVID. I don't have any kids, but my brother is like, my God, both my kids are here. My wife is here. We're all in the same spot. Kids are trying to use the same area to work. I mean, they're having to call dibs on the iPad, kind of deal. And you kind of see like how that's real. That's amazing. The employer gets to, first and foremost, show their employees they care. Right. I mean, when you start thinking about the stereotype of millennials and stuff is like they want to work for organizations that show that they care. I mean, what greater way for an organization to show that they care than providing them a way to not lose their job, but hey, something's clearly wrong. Here's an outlet for you. What a great service. The byproduct of that is impacting the job, right? Performance now gets back up and that person, which PS, most people don't go to work wanting to do a crappy job. So, right, that reality probably is fantastic for them too, because they knew that they were in a rut. They're not hitting their goals. They're having, bad performance. That would impact negatively, everything. So what an amazing way. When you look at this data and are there facts and figures that you could throw out to say the impact, mental health negatively is impacting employers, whether that's hard or soft dollar costs? Are there stats to throw out here?
It's really hard to say in that space because of so much that's involved. And again, I want to be very clear. I am not a counselor. I'm not a coach. I'm not a clinician by any means. Yeah, I'm a marketing guy. So I can tell you some stories and I can tell you some of those types of facts. I can tell you this, that we've seen, which are very consistent nationwide, a 70% increase in suicides. I mean, when you're going to lose that type of workforce, and maybe your employee population hasn't been impacted, but we have gone to more employers' location on site to deal with employees that have taken their lives at their job.
Whoa.
Than ever before. So that is referred to in my space as critical incident stress management. So for any employer out there watching, it is so important that you have a CISM included in your EAP program if you have one. If not, make sure that you have a way to get it after the fact. A lot of those ones that are baked into a plan, they do not have a CISM plan. And we've done a lot of that type of support for those types of organizations. That means, Lester, that they're going to come on site and within one business day, physically be a presence. And you can appreciate this, just to have a person there to support the rest of your employees when someone's taken their life or that they've had their life taken, whether it's a car accident, an activity on the job, which we've seen happen. We had a case where there was a shooting at an employee party and someone just happened to drive by, whatever that situation might be. To have that kind of support within one business day and to support the rest of your employees to transition back to normalcy goes a long way.
Oh man, I can't even imagine. And unfortunately, it's not like this world gets less crazy every day, it gets more crazy. And I don't use that word with the stigma. I just say there's so much stuff going on that's such a huge deal. I mean, intuitively, I don't think that there's anybody that doesn't understand the hard dollar cost. You could see it in your claims from, everything, the prescriptions, how the quantity of the prescriptions, the productivity. You got people that are coming to work that are, staring at a computer screen and not necessarily being impactful. All of these things. I'm seeing it a heck of a lot more that employers are asking about what is the benefit that we offer, because they don't even know. It is such a check the box scenario that, they remember that word EAP, it's somewhere, down in there. But the reality of it is I'm getting asked specifically more and more because employers understand the ramifications, but it's becoming a have to in order to stay competitive for the best talent. So talk to me about what you're seeing in the trends of employers offering it both, to make sure their employees have something to go to, but also we're in a tight labor market, competing for talent, such a big deal. And this is something that we're seeing more. Talk to me about that vertical.
Again, you brought up some great points. I'm going to try to speak to several of those. Number one, we're seeing about an ROI of about 8-to-1. So for every dollar you're spending for an EAP program, you're getting about $8 back. That's hard to track sometimes, but that productivity that, where the employees are now present as opposed to being absent can go a long way. The other thing I want to speak about is hiring right the first time. I can give you data for that. So as you know, we support a number of county commissioners associations. One is the state of Pennsylvania. I'm not going to tell you which exact county, but in Southern Pennsylvania, it's about a little over 2,500 lives. And in particular, they had a department that was seeing a tremendous amount of turnover, and they just couldn't get the right type of employee in there. And what we did is we went in and job benchmarked that position. And for anybody listening, watching, doesn't understand what that means, we created the ideal personality profile to fit that candidate. What would that person look like? Not physically speaking, but psychologically speaking, on a incorporating DISC assessments, incorporating other soft skills, getting into EQ. What would that person look like? And this was in children and youth. Talk about a challenging position, right? So we went in there, benchmarked that position. They got down their top candidates down to like 8, and we helped them fine tune that to get those top candidates. We helped them save about $800,000 in the next year, because they were hiring right the first time. We put ourselves out of a job because they no longer were using us to build those templates, if you will, because we solved that hiring problem is what it was. They weren't looking for the ideal candidate for the role, because here's the thing, and you're well aware of this already, the skills can be trained. It's the personality of the person you're going to have. So understanding that personality profile of the ideal candidate goes a long way and can save you so much money for the long haul, and not just hiring right, but retaining those employees for the long haul. I
say that all the time. And even in my own team, like, we could teach a monkey about insurance. You can't teach the monkey how to care about other people, to, have that high level of empathy, accountability, like care about their own personal brand, all of those things. So it makes tons of sense. And I mean, again, back to magazine articles and whatnot, EQ versus IQ. You're buying for soft skills. I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan. He's always talking about EQ versus IQ. Mm-hmm. I mean, look how many great companies don't even care if you graduated from college anymore, and all of that stuff. I mean, especially in like our businesses, this is a people business. This isn't a technical, scenario. So that makes tons of sense. I didn't even know that existed, helping a client kind of, think about the types of people that they're hiring and how much does turnover cost? How much does, all of that cost? So it makes tons of sense. So you gave a little bit of an example there of how, how an employer's using you. What are some other ways that, or maybe what was the inertia? Because I got to imagine, somebody doesn't wake up in the morning and be like, I got to address my EAP today. There's typically like, something that happens. Hopefully it's not overly that bad, but what are some areas that you're like, hey, if an employer is thinking about this is when they've historically been getting to us, so that people understand, like, if I'm facing this, maybe this is something that I need to think about.
Again, it's another great point. And I don't care what benefit you're talking about. No benefit by itself is going to serve your employee population by itself, right? So understanding those benefits and partnering with that group to make sure that awareness is there and how to access, maybe it's how to access it, how to use that. So those employers that allow us, I need to word it that way because that's the case. We have had some large groups that would not let us on site and let us meet with their employees. We wanted to be there for orientation to better explain this. So we stay in front of our clients at least 4 times a year because we want that awareness to be there. And we're that long-term business partner, not that vendor. So for those employers, if you have an EAP program in place, make sure you are engaging them, getting them to help you with content. If you have a monthly newsletter, certainly include something there that's relevant. If you've had some type of incident, hopefully it's not a serious one, but make that story known and how you use the EAP as a part of that story to create awareness. The other thing is leaderships. And again, Lester, you and I talk about this every day we walk this planet. Transparency. Tell a story. If anyone has used the EAP and they're comfortable telling that story, in part even, goes a long way in tearing down those barriers and reducing that stigma. When we realize that someone else has gone down that road, we've now decreased fear, we've now increased awareness, and we're going to increase success for that benefit to be known. And that doesn't matter what type of benefit that is. It just helps the whole utilization process for awareness.
And the reality of it is we all know somebody who has needed the mental health benefit. We all know somebody who, and we hear the stories of people who have needed it, used it, and came out the other side such a better person. So, it's almost as a society, especially as advisors and leaders out there, shame on us, if we're not having the conversation, because if we understand that the reality of getting more people to understand that it's there, breaking down the stigma, like, hey, use it. And it's okay to need some help and to be down, because on the other end, let's just say selfishly, it's better business results if I'm an employer listening to this. But let's just say with our hearts, like, we might have just saved somebody's life and made them a better mother, a better father, a better brother, that to me, like, wow, what an ability as HR, as CEO. I carry that burden of having employees, and like, I wear it as a badge of honor. Like, I need to make you a better person. That's why you work for me. You can get a paycheck from anybody. Like, this is a different scenario. There's probably not a better thing to be able to do than to give them something to deal with the things that they need to when life is throwing you the challenges that it's throwing you.
Right. And it's not like a physical injury where you see someone walking around on crutches, or they're now in a wheelchair, whatever, to get that assistance that they need. And mental health, right. You don't know. And sometimes you might be that life raft, if you will, just by simply encouraging someone. So that awareness, that regular awareness. Hey, I'm a marketing person. I am keenly aware that when I'm getting sick and tired of my message, everybody else is finally getting it. And I'll give you an example, and I won't necessarily list that specific agency that's out there, but we've got an agency we work with. They're promoting to their base. We're seeing about 27% utilization. Wow. And we're not going to go back and change that contract. We firmly believe to the long-term plan that as long as they're using it, they're not going to have other serious issues happen. It's going to prevent those things from ever occurring. And over the course of time, that utilization will go down because they're going to be getting a solution, whatever challenge they have. So
right.
Work with your EAPs that you have, get them to help you increase that awareness, help them to stay in front of your employee population so that they can use that plan you have.
So, obviously you got hard dollar claims, you've got soft dollar productivity absenteeism, you've got recruitment retention, conversations about having it. You've got that, how do I want to be known as an employer about giving my people this? So you cover the spectrum of the why from the employer. Obviously, if it's important to the employer, an advisor should care. So that draws a correlation. But I kind of want to leave people with some tangible, like, talk to me about an employer that you guys have worked with. How did they get to you? What were they looking to get accomplished? What did you guys do together, and what was the impact on the other end?
Yeah, again, we had a school district, a sizable school district, again, over 3,000 lives in southeastern Pennsylvania. And they previously had an EAP that was not being used. And they just wanted to work with someone that could help them solve that problem. And I can tell you right now, we get calls again every week being asked that question. We have this challenge with fill in the blank. Can you help us? We don't walk on water. I'm not here to say that we do, but every single time we're going to tell them we may not have the solution. but let's figure it out together. In that case, Lester, what we did is we brought in support dogs with a counselor to the district. And we set aside one room so that staff could go in there and physically meet with that life coach when there was a support dog in there. I mean, who doesn't want to see a puppy, right? Who doesn't want to see a dog? And what seems so basic and so simple, really helped them solve the problem of utilization. And they went from what they had as 0% before to over 14% in the first year.
So in that scenario, the employer is like, this isn't getting used, which has to be a bad thing, right? And we've got this benefit, even though it might be baked in there, it's getting paid for. But more importantly, we care about those people, our number one asset. Hey, I need help as the employer, and that life coach. So was that something that the employee population could sign up and say, I want to go talk to this person. I have a desire to talk to that person. So that was like, come one, come all kind of scenario.
Yeah, again, great question. So again, they're not reaching out in that case scenario, they're not reaching out to the district. They're not going through HR. They're reaching out to us directly, whether that's over the phone, which they're going to get a live person 24/7, or they can go online and set that up electronically. So they're going in and factoring that time. It's totally HIPAA compliant. No one else is knowing about that, privacy. So it's just you and setting up that appointment and getting the help that you need. Now, what they're also able to do is if they want to go into a deeper level and actually explain whatever challenge they're being faced with, they can get a much more appropriate coach to really hone in that area, which is the clinician's area of expertise. So it's like getting that, pitching coach in baseball that's going to help you with your proper mechanics. So being able to work with your EAP to let that process be in place so your HR doesn't have to be a part of the process, but it also increases your utilization.
So I got to assume there's a just plethora of things that employees talk to the counselors about. Give me a couple of examples of things that have really touched your heart, of stories that you've heard, when you're in the office, of, how lives are being impacted, employee lives.
Yeah, we've seen case after case after case, and this is just in the last 30 days, realistically, where a life was saved, where a person was contemplating suicide, a person was going back and forth. The HR team reached out to us. We were able to reach out to that employee. We got them the help that they needed. And that was an amazing story. Marriages where both couples were thinking about ending it, decided to give it another look and to actually go together and get the help that they need. Students, feeling high anxiety, but feeling embarrassed to talk about someone. This is a benefit that helps your entire household. It's not just the employee. So again, it was a case of a student that was just really feeling a lot of strain and stress going into their senior year. And a lot of other things were going on, and that they were able to get the help that they needed. And again, it's time after time. And I'm just going to say to the brutal truth of this, we're not always there at the right time. We do take calls of people who actually harmed someone else. So we're on the phone with EMS or EMT, getting the police on site, but we're able to be a part of that process to help people move beyond that calamity, which isn't always the case. So there is a silver thread in there of being able to help even when things go to a very dark place. To know that you're going to have that partner that's going to help you figure it out and going to help you move forward. Because in the end, it's about making progress despite your circumstances or how bad they may feel in that moment. So
what would you say, I guess on both ends, if we're giving advice to HR folks, typically, but I mean, this could be any business leader. What should they be looking at in their employee population to know, hey, when should a flag be waved that maybe there's an issue here? Because, there's one thing that's like, I don't want to know everybody's stuff, right? So there's a little bit, but there's also that reality that, that Billy is typically like this, and Billy for the last couple of weeks have been like this, but like, how far is too far? I mean, any advice there that you give to HR leadership about being aware of their employee population?
Yeah, great question. Again, you and I are numbers people in certain areas of business and in life. And again, it's looking at the numbers of your employees. What are those things they're doing today that they may not have been doing yesterday or the day before? Those anomalous behaviors are a great predictor to something's going on. And maybe it was a bad meal, maybe it was something else. But it's good to take note of that and be aware of what's going on. And that could be an employee sitting in the corner who's normally a jovial person, outgoing, and now they're not going to be as jovial, right? They're going to be sitting by themselves. They're going to be avoiding people, making note of those things. Maybe now they're late and they were never late before. They were normally there 20 minutes, 30 minutes early every single day. Maybe they're not responding. Their response time is different on an email thread that's out there. So looking at those behaviors can be a good indicator of, hey, there might be something going on here, and reaching out to that employee and saying, you know what, just checking in. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is someone thinks, wow, they were just checking in on me. That's never a bad thing, to show that you care for someone, and then let them know that the best way to contact your EAP provider. So again, we do a lot of training with supervisors so that supervisors can be aware of these things, what to look for. Again, and they're going to be the ones that are also going to be hearing some of these things in earshot. I'm not, so that can be a challenging piece sometimes, but being genuinely invested in your employee population down to the individual. That was one of the things that Vince Lombardi was very passionate about and was why he was so successful. He cared down to the individual person, right? So if you can understand the people, not just the population, but if you can break that down from you as a leader can understand your management team, the management team knows their divisions, and you can break it down to those numbers, the better understanding you have of your people, the easier it will be to get them the help they need when they need it. You're going to see it a lot sooner.
Well, it's funny. And I always think about this, that the good brainwashing you can do to yourself, right? So like, I think of like, hey, when you don't want to make that extra call or deal with that, it's like, shame on me if I don't do this because of the number of people that we can impact when we work with an advisor, when we work with an employer. I kind of think about it in that same light of, HR and leadership need to be shame on them if by not wanting to be intrusive or get into somebody's business or potentially have that awkward conversation, what happens when that potential reality of that worst case? I'd so much rather go home and be like, the person yelled at me, they didn't want me in their business, but I tried, rather than, man, I've been contemplating the last couple of days of saying something and then something bad happens. It's just, it doesn't even come close to the guilt and how you would feel as an individual. And back to that word impact, right? Like you could literally be impacting a life, a family, just such a big deal. Last couple questions here. Some of the things I've had some folks really ask me is, our health plan doesn't really have any benefits around that, right? There's not like a certain amount of media, whatever. And then I've also heard like it's been really hard for people to actually use the benefits. So like people have come into HR and said, our benefit says this, but nobody's in network. And so I can't even go see somebody. Talk to me about that, kind of customization. It isn't one size fits all. And that level of importance around that, because if a benefit is there, but people can't use it, or it's financially punitive for them, was it really a benefit in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, what benefit is it to get a program in place that can't support your employees, right? So if they're calling it, and nationwide right now, there's a demand. There's only so many clinicians in this country, right? So I'm not going to deny that there is a demand. And yes, we're seeing a demand. However, we're adding to our network literally every single day. So we're also building that out as our clients grow, we're growing with them. So when they add an office in Louisiana, we're going to add clinicians in Louisiana. If they're expanding and reaching out outside of Boston, we're going to make sure that our network is robust enough to handle the amount of employees they're going to take on in the Boston area. So work with your EAP to make sure. I mean, and again, if they're going to offer face-to-face options as well as virtual, you need to make sure that they can be there. If they're not there today, they need to be there in place and in the process of growing with you. It's that whole scalable network concept, making sure they can support you when there's a need. It's never a good idea to start putting out the safety net with the employees ready to fall out of the building, right? It needs to be in place. So making sure that that's in place, working with that provider goes a long way. So again, maybe it was never used before, but you cannot look into the future and know when there's going to be some type of scenario when one or maybe many of your employees are going to need that EAP.
So let's leave folks with some tangible. Let's go advisor audience first. If you're sitting here and you know that there's an advisor community listening, what's the thing that you tell them to think about, start doing, stop doing, et cetera?
Yeah, I would say number one, look at the plan that they may already have. I'm not here. I am not on this program to sell my services. I'm here to make an impact in people's lives. So if you're an advisor, look at that EAP program they have, understand those key words and understand what they mean so you can better explain it. You are the one who can actually make a huge impact in that employee population by simply explaining it and putting it more top of mind for that group. Most people around the country are still just checking that box. And there's a reason why embedded plans are less than 1% on average being used, less than 1%. So if you want to be a rock star advisor, right now, mental health is top of mind for most people around the country. Keep that top of mind for them. Start leading with that. There's a lot of advisors I know that are doing that. They're explaining that in the best way and say, is this best for you? Understanding what is out there, because not all EAP providers are created equal. They're not. And understanding what best options you can give them, maybe they can't afford that top highest rated, most expensive EAP program. That's fine. But there is something out there that they can afford when you look at that ROI. It's going to make a positive impact. So do your homework.
Yeah. And you start thinking about, that rhetorical question, is it something you can afford, or is it something that you can't afford not to do? Right. It's such an interesting thing. That employer that's out there, I tell people all the time, we can't approach life. We can't approach our business the way we have in the past, because we are in a time that's unprecedented, right? I mean, it's like, the Great Resignation, post-COVID. Gas is $6, gallon of milk is ridiculous. I can't get things because the supply chain issue, employees to move want 3 times more the salary than they did. I mean, there's all this thing. So the world is completely different than it has been before. What's your advice to employers as we, round this episode out?
Great question, Lester. Again, I believe in this audience, the vast majority of the people who are watching this, who are employers, they genuinely care. They are genuinely caring people that want to make an impact in their employee population's lives. So I will say this, because you can't see me right now in this podcast. So I'm going to tell you, I'm 6'5", I'm 265. And I'm not ashamed to say I use the services I sell. I'm not ashamed to say self-care is not selfish. So for you employers out there, whether or not you have an EAP program in place, you need to prioritize your own self-care. And that needs to happen yesterday. I'm a survivor of severe burnout. I was told to take a 6-month sabbatical. Like Lester, I'm a workaholic. I laughed in the person's face when they said to take 6 months off. Because I did not take that advice, it took 2 years of my life away from me to get better back online. So number one, employers, take care of your own mental health. Take care of your own self-care. Do give yourself that checkup. Talk to a wellness coach. Talk to a life coach. Make sure that you're on the right path, and then do your best part to make sure your employees have that same benefit as well. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And we're talking a very small amount. We're talking in some cases anywhere from $1.50 to $3, per employee a month in most cases, to make a in some cases, life-saving gift of a benefit to them. So take care of yourself. take care of your employees. And you know what? Be more transparent. Be willing to share some of your realistic challenges. I'm not saying you got to go deep and dark, but we all have challenges in life. And the more transparent you can be with your employees, talking about how you've gone through a hardship and overcome that, it's going to inspire them to do the same thing in themselves. And they're going to be the type of employee that's going to buy in to your organization, and they won't want to leave.
Man, I want to run through a wall right now for it. So the man who says people over everything all the time, John Troutman. John, if somebody heard that and like, holy cow, I got to get a hold of this guy. I got to hear more about this company. Where does somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah, again, thanks again, Lester. I'm all over LinkedIn. You can find me there real easily, John Troutman there, as well as online. You can find me at mseap.com. Lots of great resources there on our website. You can find me there as well. So I really appreciate this opportunity.